The glacier. It was a fine sunny morning when we set out to cover the last 7 miles to the glacier. We had expected this to be a stiff climb, but the last dak bungalow was situated at well over 10,000 feet above sea level, and the ascent was to be fairly gradual. And then suddenly, abruptly, there were no more trees. As the bungalow dropped out of sight, the trees and bushes gave way to short grass and little blue and pink alpine flowers. The snow peaks were close now, ringing us in on every side. We passed waterfalls, cascading hundreds of feet down precipitous rock faces, thundering into the little river. A great golden eagle hovered over us for some time. "I feel different again," said Kamal. "We are very high now," I said. "I hope we won't get headaches." "I've got one already," complained Anil. "Let's have some tea." We had left our cooking utensils at the bungalow, expecting to return there for the night, and had brought with us only a few biscuits, chocolate, and a thermos of tea. We finished the tea, and Bisnu scrambled about on the grassy slopes, collecting wild strawberries. They were tiny strawberries, very sweet, and they did nothing to satisfy our appetites. There was no sign of habitation or human life. The only creatures to be found at that height were the gurals, sure-footed mountain goats, and an occasional snow leopard or a bear. We found and explored a small cave, and then, turning a bend, came unexpectedly upon the glacier. The hill fell away, and there, confronting us, was a great white field of snow and ice, cradled between two peaks that could only have been the abode of the gods. We were speechless for several minutes. Kamal took my hand and held on to it for reassurance. Perhaps he was not sure that what he saw was real. Anil's mouth hung open. Bisnu's eyes glittered with excitement. We proceeded cautiously on the snow, supporting each other on the slippery surface. But we could not go far, because we were quite unequipped for any high altitude climbing. It was pleasant to feel that we were the only boys in our town who had climbed so high. A few black rocks jutted out from the snow, and we sat down on them to feast our eyes on the view. The sun reflected sharply from the snow, and we felt surprisingly warm. "Let's sunbathe," said Anil on a sudden impulse. "Yes, let's do that," I said. In a few minutes we had taken off our clothes, and sitting on the rocks were exposing ourselves to the elements. It was delicious to feel the sun crawling over my skin. Within half an hour I was a post box red, and so was Bisnu, and the two of us decided to get into our clothes before the sun scorched the skin of our backs. Kamal and Anil appeared to be more resilient to sunlight and laughed at our discomfiture. Bisnu and I avenged ourselves by gathering up handfuls of snow and rubbing it on their backs. They dressed quickly enough after that, Anil leaping about like a performing monkey. Meanwhile, almost imperceptibly, clouds had covered some of the peaks, and a white mist drifted down the mountain slopes. It was time to get back to the bungalow. We would barely make it before dark. We had not gone far when lightning began to sizzle above the mountain tops, followed by waves of thunder. "Let's run!" shouted Anil. "We can take shelter in the cave." The clouds could hold themselves in no longer, and the rain came down suddenly, stinging our faces as it was whipped up by an icy wind. Half blinded, we ran as fast as we could along the slippery path and stumbled, drenched and exhausted, into the little cave. The cave was mercifully dry and not very dark. We remained at the entrance, watching the rain sweep past us, listening to the wind whistling down the long gorge. "It will take some time to stop," said Kamal. "No, it will pass soon," said Bisnu. "These storms are short and fierce." Anil produced his pocket knife, and to pass the time we carved our names in the smooth rock of the cave. "We will come here again when we are older," said Kamal, "and perhaps our names will still be here." It had grown dark by the time the rain stopped. A full moon helped us find our way. We went slowly and carefully. The rain had loosened the earth and stones kept rolling down the hillside. I was afraid of starting a landslide. "I hope we don't meet the Lidini now," said Anil fervently. "I thought you didn't believe in her," I said. "I don't," replied Anil. "But what if I am wrong?" We saw only a gural poised on the brow of a precipice silhouetted against the sky, and then the path vanished. Had it not been for the bright moonlight, we might have walked straight into an empty void. The rain had caused a landslide, and where there had been a narrow path, there was only a precipice of loose, slippery shale. "We'll have to go back," said Bisnu. "It will be too dangerous to try and cross in the dark." "We'll sleep in the cave," I suggested. "We have nothing to sleep in," said Anil. "Not a single blanket between us and nothing to eat." "We'll just have to rough it till morning," said Kamal. "It will be better than breaking our necks here." We returned to the cave, which did at least have the virtue of being dry. Vishnu had matches, and he made a fire with some dry sticks which had been left in the cave by a previous party. We ate what was left of a loaf of bread. There was no sleep for any of us that night. We lay close to each other for comfort, but the ground was hard and uneven, and every noise we heard outside the cave made us think of leopards and bears and even abominable snowmen. We got up as soon as there was a faint glow in the sky. The snow peaks were bright pink, but we were too tired and hungry and worried to care for the beauty of the sunrise. We took the path to the landslide and once again looked for a way across. Kamal ventured to take a few steps off the loose pebbles, but the ground gave way immediately, and we had to grab him by the arms and shoulders to prevent him from sliding 100 feet down the gorge. "Now, what are we going to do?" I asked. "Look for another way," said Bisnu. "But do you know of any?" And we all turned to look at Bisnu, expecting him to provide the solution to our problem. "I have heard of a way," said Bisnu, "but I have never used it. It will be a little dangerous, I think. The path has not been used for several years, not since the traders stopped coming in from the Tibet." "Never mind, we'll try it," said Anil. "We'll have to cross the glacier first," said Bisnu. "That's the main problem." We looked at each other in silence. The glacier didn't look difficult to cross, but we knew that it would not be easy for novices like us. For almost a quarter of a mile, it consisted of hard, slippery ice. Anil was the first to arrive at a decision. "Come on," he said. "There's no time to waste." We were soon on the glacier, and we remained on it for a long time. For every 2 steps forward, we slid 1 step backward. Our progress was slow and awkward. Sometimes, after advancing several yards across the ice at a steep incline, one of us would slip back and the others would have to slither down to help him up. At one particularly difficult spot, I dropped our water bottle and, grabbing at it, lost my footing, fell full length and went sliding some 20 feet down the ice slope. I had sprained my wrist and hurt my knee, and was a proof and was to prove a liability for the rest of the trek. Kamal tied his handkerchief round my hand, and Anil took charge of the water bottle, which we had filled with ice. Using my good hand to grab Bisnu's legs whenever I slipped, I struggled on behind the others. It was almost noon, and we were quite famished when we put our feet on grass again. And then we had another steep climb, clutching at roots and grasses before we reached the path that Bisnu had spoken about. It was little more than a goat track, but it took us round the mountain and brought us within sight of the duck bungalow. I could eat a whole chicken, said Kamal. I could eat two, I said. I could eat a snowman, said Bisnu. And I could eat the chowkidar, said Anil. Fortunately for the chowkidar, he had anticipated our hunger, and when we staggered into the bungalow late in the afternoon, we found a meal waiting for us. True, there was no chicken, but so ravenous did we feel that even the lowly onion tasted delicious. We had Bisnu to thank for getting us back successfully. He had brought us over mountain and glacier with all the skill and confidence of a boy who had the Himalayas in his blood. We took our time getting back to Kapkote, fished in the Sarayu river, bathed with the village boys we had seen on our way up, collected strawberries and ferns and wildflowers, and finally said goodbye to Bisnu. Anil wanted to take Bisnu along with us, but the boy's parents refused to let him go, saying that he was too young for the life in a city, but we were of the opinion that Bisnu could have taught the city boys a few things. Never mind, said Kamal. We'll go on another trip next year and we'll take you with us, Bisnu. We'll write and let you know our plans. This promise made Bisnu happy, and he saw us off at the bus stop, shouldering our bedding to the end. Then he skimmed up the trunk of a fir tree to have a better view of us leaving, and we saw him waving to us from the tree as our bus went round the bend from Kapkote, and the hills were left behind and the plains stretched out below.